Good morning, children. We will continue with the civics chapter today. I am starting from the second point. A communal mind often leads to a quest for political dominance of one's own religious community. For those belonging to majority community, this takes the form of majoritarian dominance. For those belonging to minority community, it can take the form of a desire to form a separate political unit. So that means that those people who belong to the minority community, when they feel that the majority community is having a upper hand, they are not being given preference in the political field, they prefer that they should form a separate political unit. Political mobilization on religious lines. Mobilization means political movement on religious lines is another frequent form of communalism. This involves the use of sacred symbols, religious leaders, emotional appeal, and plain fear in order to bring the followers of one religion together in the political arena. So, this is another form of promoting communalism. People use sacred symbols, religious leaders promote their own religion, they emotionally appeal the people, they try to convince the people to adopt their religion or to become the followers of their religion, and they pursue the people, they motivate the people that the people of one religion should form one separate group as far as political field is concerned. In electoral politics, this often involves special appeal to the interests or emotions of voters of one religion in preference to others. So when voters are taken into consideration, this part plays a very important role because the people get motivated, the people get inclined towards those people who belong to their common religion. Sometimes communalism takes its most ugly form of communal violence, riots, and massacre. That is why communalism is never good, because it often creates rifts among people, it often creates differences among people, it leads to violence, it leads to massacre and riots. India and Pakistan suffered some of the worst communal riots at the time of partition. The post-independence period has also seen large-scale communal violence. Secular state. Communalism was and continues to be one of the major challenges to democracy in our country. Why? Why it is a challenge? Because India is a secular country, and in a secular country like India, there should be no scope, there should be no room for communalism. The makers of our constitution were aware of this challenge. That is why they chose the model of a secular state. In order to discourage communalism, India was declared a secular state. We adopted the model of a secular state where all religions are given equal importance and we do not promote any particular religion. This choice was reflected in several constitutional provisions that we studied last year. There is no official religion for the Indian state. We all know this because we are a secular country and we give equal weightage, equal respect to all religions. Unlike the status of Buddhism in Sri Lanka, that of Islam in Pakistan, and that of Christianity in England, our constitution does not give a special status to any religion. The constitution provides to all individuals and communities freedom to profess, practice, and propagate any religion or not to follow any. This we all know that we, the citizens of the country, have been given this freedom by our constitution that we can adopt any religion of our choice, we can follow any religion we want to. Even this freedom has been given that if we don't want to follow any religion, then we are free not to follow any religion altogether. It is not that I have to follow some religion. No. If I don't want to follow any religion, I am given this freedom by the constitution. The Constitution prohibits discrimination on grounds of religion. At the same time, the Constitution allows the state to intervene in the matters of religion in order to ensure equality within religious communities. For example, it bans untouchability. That means if it is seen that any discrimination is practiced, any differentiation is practiced on religious grounds, then the Constitution allows the state to intervene and solve that problem also, like the problem of untouchability, the social evil which existed in our country has been banned. Understood in this sense, secularism is not just an ideology of some parties or persons. This idea constitutes one of the foundations of our country. Communalism should not be seen as a threat to some people in India. It threatens the very idea of India. Why we say that it threatens, communalism threatens the very idea of India? Why? Because India is a secular country, and if communalism grows in such a country, then the idea, the concept behind secularism, the idea behind declaring India a secular state will be defeated. That is why communalism needs to be combated. A secular constitution like ours is necessary, but not sufficient to combat communalism. Here, combat means to overcome, to finish communalism completely. Although our constitution has provisions to see to it that India remains a secular country, but these provisions are not enough to combat communalism. Communal prejudices and propaganda need to be countered in everyday life, and religion based mobilization needs to be countered in the area of politics. That means we have to see that communal prejudices and propaganda in everyday life is brought under check, and mobilization of people, religion based mobilization. That means people belonging to one religion moving to other parts of the country or different areas where people of their religion live in majority. Such a kind of movement which is religion based should also be checked, especially in the political field. Caste and politics. We have seen two instances of the expression of social divisions in the area of politics, one largely positive and the other largely negative. Let us turn to our final case, that of caste and politics, that has both positive and negative aspects. Unlike gender and religion, caste division is special to India. All societies have some kind of social inequality and some form of division of labor. In most societies, occupations are passed on from one generation to another. Caste system is an extreme form of this. What makes it different from other societies is that in this system, hereditary occupational division was sanctioned by rituals. Members of the same caste were supposed to form a social community that practiced the same or similar occupation, married within the caste group, and did not eat with the members from other caste groups. So this kind of discrimination was always there in India, and we can't say that it has been completely overcome. It is still existing in the country, although now it is a little less, but it has not been eradicated completely. Still, the high caste people would not prefer to, in many places, not in all cases, I am not saying that it is practiced throughout the country, but still in many places the high caste people don't prefer to sit and eat with the low caste people. A particular occupation is being practiced by a particular group in the community. There are certain occupations which have been restricted to a particular group in the community, still it is seen. So such a kind of discrimination still exists. caste system was based on exclusion of and discrimination against outcast groups. Caste system was based on exclusion of and discrimination against the outcast groups, those who were considered outcasts, that means neglected sections of the society, those who were considered to be low people in the society, downtrodden people in the society. They were subjected to the human practice of untouchability, about which you have studied in class 9. We all know that especially the Shudras in the olden days, they were considered as untouchables and they were considered outcasts. That is why political leaders and social reformers like Jyotiba Phule, Gandhiji, B.R. Ambedkar and Periyar Ramaswamy Naicker advocated and worked to establish a society in which caste inequalities are absent. Partly due to their efforts and partly due to other socio-economic changes, castes and caste system in modern India have undergone great changes. As I just said, that although the situation has changed, now it is very much less as compared to olden days, but we can't say that we have totally overcome this problem. With economic development, large-scale urbanization, growth of literacy and education, occupational mobility, and the weakening of the position of landlords in the villages, the old notions of caste hierarchy are breaking down. Now, these factors, children, you must learn the factors which have brought about changes in the society, changes for the betterment of the society. What are the factors? The economic development in the country, large-scale urbanization, growth of literacy and education, occupational mobility, weakening of the position of landlords in the village has brought the system of caste hierarchy. It has broken down the system of caste hierarchy, and now it has become, it is not so much prevalent in the Indian society as it was in the olden days. Now, most of the times in urban areas, it does not matter much who is walking along next to us on a street or eating at the next table in a restaurant. When we go to a restaurant, do we ever bother to find out that the person who is sitting and eating on the next table, does he belong to a minority section of the society? Is he the scheduled caste, scheduled tribe, or any? I'm not naming any particular community in the society, but do we ever bother to find out who is sitting next to us on the next table? Do we ever bother? No, because now our outlook has broadened, outlook has changed. Now, most of the times in urban areas, it does not matter much who is walking along next to us on a street or eating at the next table in a restaurant. The Constitution of India prohibited any caste-based discrimination and laid the foundations of policies to reverse the injustices of the caste system. If a person who lived a century ago were to return to India, she would be greatly surprised at the change that has come about in the country. Earlier, there were lots of discriminations on the basis of caste and religion, but now lots of changes have come. Our outlook has broadened, and we don't bother who is walking along on the road or who is eating with us in the restaurant. So our outlook has greatly changed. Yet, caste has not disappeared from contemporary India. So it is wrong to say, as I have told earlier also, that we can't say that this practice has completely been abolished. No, it has not been abolished completely, but it has been reduced to a large extent. Yet, caste has not disappeared from contemporary India. Some of the older aspects of caste have persisted. Even now, most of the people marry within their own caste or tribe. This is still existing in our country. We still want that marriages should take place within our own caste. we would not prefer our children marrying some other caste. This outlook is still there. Untouchability has not ended completely despite constitutional prohibition. Effects of the centuries of advantages and disadvantages continue to be felt today. The caste groups that had access to education under the old system have done very well in acquiring modern education as well. The caste groups that had access to education under the old system have done very well in acquiring modern education as well. That means now education is free for all. It is not that only the high caste people can get modern education, the low caste cannot. There is no such discrimination. Those groups that did not have access to education and were prohibited from acquiring it have naturally lagged behind. That is why there is a disproportionately large presence of upper caste among the urban middle classes in our country. Although now education is being given by and large to everybody, but in olden days only the upper caste people were allowed to get education. So the ratio of educated people among the lower caste and the upper caste, there is a disbalance in the ratio. The ratio is not the same. Still there are more of upper caste people who are educated in the urban areas. Caste continues to be closely linked to economic status. Caste in politics. As in the case of communalism, casteism is rooted in the belief that caste is the sole basis of social community. That means still we have this concept in our mind, we have this thought in our mind that our society should be divided on the basis of caste. The society is based upon caste. We still have this concept in our mind. According to this way of thinking, people belonging to the same caste belong to a natural social community and have the same interests which they do not share with anyone from another caste. That means if there is a particular caste which has a large section of population of the same caste, then they believe that they are being given this natural right to live in the society and to share the same common interests in the society, whereas they do not like to prefer people of other castes living with them in the same social setup. They want to discriminate themselves from others who belong to other castes or other religions if they are a small section of people. I am reading this again. According to this way of thinking, people belonging to the same caste belong to a natural social community and have the same interests which they do not share with anyone from another caste. As we saw in the case of communalism, such a belief is not borne out by our experience. Caste is one aspect of our experience, but it is not the only relevant or the most important aspect. Caste can take various forms in politics. When parties choose candidates in elections, they keep in mind the caste composition of the electorate and nominate candidates from different castes so as to muster necessary support to win elections. Pay attention, we are seeing how caste takes different forms in politics. I am reading this again. When parties choose candidates in elections, they keep in mind the caste composition of the electorate. That means they keep in consideration that are the candidates belonging to different castes or not, and nominate candidates from different castes so as to muster necessary support to win elections. Because if they will include only people or candidates belonging to one caste, then only people belonging to that caste will give them votes, others will not. So they see to it, they keep this into mind, they keep this into consideration, that The candidates should belong to different castes so that people from different castes can give their votes, they can give their support. When governments are formed, political parties usually take care that representatives of different castes and tribes find a place in it. Only one caste is not given preference. It is kept in mind that political parties give opportunity of people of different caste to represent their party, and they find a place in their party. Second, political parties and candidates in elections make appeals to caste sentiments to muster support. See again. Political parties and candidates in elections make appeals to caste sentiments to muster support. Some political parties are known to favor some castes and are seen as their representatives. So, the second thing which we can observe in politics is that some political parties and the candidates of their parties, they keep into mind the caste sentiment in order to muster support. That means if they belong to a particular caste, they will see to it that they look into the interests of the people, they fulfill the interests of the people who belong to their same caste in order to get their support. Some political parties are known to favor some castes and are seen as their representatives. So they favor in such a way, they go to such an extent that they start favoring the people of their caste, and they see that they are the representatives of this particular caste. They give so much preference to their own caste as if they are the representatives of that particular caste. Third, universal adult franchise and the principle of one person, one vote compelled political leaders to gear up to the task of mobilizing and securing political support. It also brought new consciousness among the people of castes that were hitherto treated as inferior and low. Hitherto treated, that means they were till now treated as inferior or low. So the meaning of this paragraph is that all those people belonging to a particular caste who were considered inferior and low till now, they have been given importance now under the concept of universal adult franchise and the principle of one person, one vote. They give importance to all people now, irrespective of their caste, irrespective of their religion. The people are given importance. All people belonging to any caste are given importance because they want political support. How they will come to power if they will discriminate people on the basis of caste like this, then they will not get popular support, they will not get enough support. So in order to get political support, they have now started giving preference, importance and weightage to such people, also people belonging to different castes who were earlier considered inferior and low. The focus on caste in politics can sometimes give an impression that elections are all about caste and nothing else. That is far from true. Just consider these. No parliamentary constituency in the country has a clear majority of one single caste. Obviously, we have never seen that in our country. The government which is being formed, all the members from the Prime Minister to all his council of ministers all belong to the same caste. It has never happened and it can never happen, and I must say it should never happen also. No parliamentary constituency in the country has a clear majority of one single caste. So every candidate and party needs to win the confidence of more than one caste and community to win elections. Second, no party wins the votes of all the voters of caste or community. No party wins the votes of all the voters of a caste or community. No party can say that if I belong to XYZ caste, then all members who are all people who are belonging to XYZ caste, they have given votes to me. No, we can't say this, because in a country like India, we are free to cast our vote to the candidate of our choice, irrespective of his caste. When people say that a caste is a vote bank of one party, it usually means that a large proportion of voters from that caste vote for that party. Next, many political parties may put up candidates from the same caste. Some voters have more than one candidate from their caste, while many voters have no candidate from their caste. Next, the ruling party and the sitting MP or MLA frequently lose elections in our country. That could not have happened if all castes and communities were frozen in their political preferences. That means the ruling party or the present MP or MLA, they can lose elections any time in the country. It is not that a particular caste, the people of a particular caste are voting for them, so they cannot lose elections. It is not so. That could not have happened if all caste and communities were frozen in their political preferences. Had they been given votes by all members belonging to their caste, then this would not have happened. But because India is a secular country and this never happens, people give votes to people of their choice, to candidates of their choice. That is why the ruling party or the MP or the MLA, they can lose elections in the country anytime. That means in our country, we don't elect our representatives on the basis of caste. It is not that I belong to a particular caste, so I will give the vote to the candidate of my caste only. This is not the criteria. We choose the candidate on the basis of his capability, on the basis of his caliber, not on the basis of his caste. Now I am stopping here for today, children, and in our next class we will start from the next paragraph. Thank you.